The scent of motor oil, leather seats, and fresh polish always reminded Nathan of home. Ever since he was 16, he had walked the same showroom floor, greeted the same loyal customers, and spent countless nights crunching numbers in the office above the lot. The family dealership, Brookfield Motors, had been his life. It wasn't just a job. It was a legacy. One he believed, with every calloused hand and late-night repair, he'd one day inherit. Nate, the client, wants to test drive the Grandi. Cherokee, you want to take this one? Asked Monica, the floor manager, poking her head into his office. Nathan smiled and pushed back his chair. Yeah, why not? Been a while since I drove one with a V8. He stood, stretching his aching back, still sore from fixing the hydraulic lift in the service bay 2 nights ago. His job title said Senior Sales Executive, but that never stopped him from getting under a car when something needed fixing. That was just how his father raised him. Work hard, stay humble, and always put family first. But family had begun to shift lately. A week ago, their father, Ronald McMillan, had passed unexpectedly from a stroke. The grief still clung to Nathan's chest like a weight he couldn't shed. But amidst the sorrow was an unease, a whisper in the halls that the will, their father's final say, had changed in the final days. Nathan tried not to think about it. He knew his father would never cut him out. After all, he'd been running the business in everything but name for the past 5 years. The test drive went smoothly, the client impressed, and Nathan returned to the dealership just in time to see his younger brother Kyle roll in with a smug grin and a brand new Rolex glinting on his wrist. Nathan, Kyle said, voice cool, can I see you in Dad's? My office? That word, my, landed like a punch. Nathan followed him upstairs, jaw tightening. Kyle was 6 years younger, always more interested in real estate, crypto, and late-night parties than transmission. Belts and oil filters. He'd been gone for most of the past decade and only returned when their father had fallen ill. Inside the office, it was colder. The mahogany desk, once filled with invoices and dealership manuals, was now decorated with sleek tech gadgets and a brandy decanter. Kyle sat behind the desk like he'd owned it for years. I won't sugarcoat this, Kyle began. Dad made me the sole owner, everything. Dealership, land, assets. He said you were too sentimental, that you lacked vision. Nathan froze. What? Kyle slid a file across the desk. Your severance package, effective today. Nathan didn't touch it. His fingers curled into fists at his sides. I've given my whole life to this place, he said, voice low. Kyle shrugged. And I'm giving it a future. No more bleeding money on outdated systems and personal sales pitches. We're modernizing, automating, rebranding. You think firing the guy who built this place is modernization? I think removing deadweight is good business. Nathan's world tilted. Everything he had helped build, every holiday missed, every late-night shift, erased in a single meeting. He walked out without another word. Not because he was defeated, but because Kyle had no idea what Nathan had done just 2 weeks ago. No idea about the quiet investment he'd made. No clue about the revolutionary electric vehicle startup he had just become a founding partner of. Kyle thought he'd ended Nathan's story, but he had just turned the page. Nathan sat behind the wheel of his aging Silverado in the dealership's parking lot, staring blankly ahead. The severance envelope lay untouched on the passenger seat. His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as the memory of Kyle's smug grin burned in his mind. He had never felt this level of betrayal. Not even when Kyle crashed their father's Mercedes at 18 and blamed Nathan. Not even when Kyle disappeared for 2 years and came back asking for money. This was different. This was personal. But Nathan wasn't the same man he had been 10 years ago, or even 6 months ago. He had learned a valuable lesson in silence. When you're underestimated, you're free to prepare without anyone noticing. 6 months before their father died, Nathan had taken a leap. He had quietly invested the last of his savings into a startup called Voltage Motors, an ambitious new EV company developing modular electric drivetrains that could be retrofitted into classic car bodies. It was a niche idea that no one took seriously at first, except a small group of engineers, a former Tesla exec, and Nathan. He had met the CEO, Dev Karam, at an industry expo in Chicago. What began as a casual conversation over bourbon turned into hours of animated debate and laughter. A week later, Nathan was flying out to their prototype warehouse in Flagstaff. A month later, he was wiring $250,000 of his hard-earned savings into their Series A round. He didn't tell anyone, not even his father. Not because he didn't trust him, but because he didn't want to mix the legacy of Brookfield Motors with his own shot at the future. And 2 weeks ago, before Kyle even got his grubby hands on the dealership, something extraordinary happened. Voltage closed a $30 million funding round, led by one of the most aggressive green tech investment firms in the country. And Nathan? He wasn't just an investor anymore. He was named head of sales and strategy. He hadn't even had time to tell Kyle. Not that he ever planned to. Now, staring at the front windows of the dealership where his face used to be on the top seller plaque, Nathan exhaled. Then he smiled. Not out of joy, but out of something far more dangerous. Clarity. Nathan didn't go home. Instead, he drove 2 hours south to the Voltage R&D facility, an old airplane hangar converted into a tech incubator nestled at the edge of an abandoned airstrip. He flashed his badge at the scanner and was greeted by the familiar hiss of the hydraulic doors. "Welcome back, Mr. McMillan," said Leah, the systems engineer, without looking up from her tablet. "Long day," he replied. Dev, the CEO, popped, his head out of the glass conference room. "You look like someone just stole your birthday cake." "Kyle fired me," Nathan said simply. Dev blinked. "From your own family's company?" "Yep." A pause. Then, "What a dumbass." Nathan cracked a smile. "Agreed." They sat together in the quiet space of the glass room. A low hum of 3D printers echoed in the background. On the conference table sat the prototype chassis, sleek, modular, and revolutionary. "We've got the green light," Dev said. "We're going to the Detroit Auto Tech Summit next month. Our slot is next to Lucid and Rivian." Nathan's eyes lit up. "We're ready for that?" "We will be. With your pitch and our product, we're going to turn heads." Nathan nodded, suddenly grateful. Kyle might have slammed one door shut, but this one, this future, was swinging wide open, and he had no intention of holding back. Kyle stood behind the dealership counter, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, giving a forced smile to a customer. The phones were ringing. 2 of the senior salesmen were out sick, and the new automated CRM software he'd installed was already bugging out. He hadn't expected the transition to be so rocky. He especially hadn't expected half the service. Team to quit when Nathan left. "What do you mean Trevor resigned?" Kyle barked into his Bluetooth earpiece. "He said he won't work under someone who thinks oil is a dirty word," replied Monica dryly. Kyle cursed under his breath. Truth was, he had expected the dealership to fall into line. He expected loyalty. After all, he was the owner now. But what he hadn't counted on was how much loyalty was tied to Nathan. Not to the McMillan name, but to him personally. Every technician, every mechanic, even the janitor, respected Nathan. Because he never acted like he was above them. Because he worked late. Because he got his hands dirty. Kyle had none of that. The business was still running, but the foundation was starting to crack. A week later, Kyle saw something that made his stomach drop. An article. On the front page of Autotech Visionary Weekly, Startup Voltage aims to revolutionize classic EV conversions. Head of strategy, Nathan McMillan brings dealership grit to the EV world. Kyle read the headline 3 times. There was Nathan, smiling, standing next to a slick-looking retro Mustang body converted into a stealthy modern EV. The photo was captioned, "Former dealership leader joins green tech revolution." Kyle's hands trembled. He wasn't jealous. He was furious. Because Nathan hadn't just walked away quietly. He had walked into something bigger. Something that made Kyle's dealership look like a thrift store in a Tesla showroom. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't fired his brother. He had freed his biggest competition. Nathan hadn't realized how much mental space Brookfield Motors had consumed until it was gone. Now, every day felt sharper, clearer, more focused. He rented a loft apartment above a microbrewery near the Voltage facility. The walls were bare brick, the furniture secondhand, and the air always smelled faintly of hops. But it was his. No legacy pressure, no family shadows. His days were packed, working with the engineers on messaging, sitting in pitch meetings with auto journalists, guiding the sales team as they built connections with custom garages and influencers in the automotive space. His brain buzzed constantly. But it wasn't exhaustion. It was momentum. One night, Dev pulled him aside. "You ever think about reaching out to your brother?" he asked. Nathan didn't even look up from his notes. "No. Not even to rub it in?" Nathan finally looked up, smiling coldly. "Why would I? That would require me to care what he thinks." But the truth was he did care. He just wouldn't give Kyle the satisfaction of knowing it. Not yet. Kyle sat across from a local reporter, trying to put on a confident face. "Of course we're aware of the EV shift," he said, flashing a tight smile. "Brookfield Motors is already speaking with several manufacturers to bring in hybrid models next quarter." But inside, Kyle was seething. Nathan's name kept showing up, on blogs, on YouTube car channels, on social media. Voltage was becoming a buzzword. People were throwing around phrases like the future of restoration and a threat to traditional dealerships. Worse, sales at Brookfield Motors were dipping, not crashing, but bleeding slowly. Inventory was piling up. Nathan had always had a gift for talking buyers into upgrades. Kyle's new hires were more robotic. The CRM software was alienating older clients. And with 3 senior techs gone, the service department was barely functioning. Kyle didn't say it out loud, but the walls were closing in. And Nathan, he was climbing. The Detroit Auto Tech Summit was chaos in a bottle. Voltage's booth was sleek and understated. A matte black 1969 Dodge Charger, converted with their modular EV system, drew massive crowds. Influencers took selfies. Engineers asked hard questions. Investors scribbled notes. Rivian and Ford execs passed by quietly, eyeing the display like they'd seen a ghost from the future. Nathan was electric. He moved through the crowd like he was born for it. Charismatic, sharp, natural. His demo speech was clipped and compelling. Every word had weight. Every slide, every answer was delivered like a man who had finally stopped holding back. By the second day, Autotech magazine had labeled Voltage the most exciting startup at this year's summit. And Nathan? He was finally visible, not as someone's employee, not as someone's son, but as someone shaping the future. Kyle watched the YouTube stream from his office. Nathan looked effortless, powerful, respected. Every moment made Kyle's stomach twist tighter. He slammed the laptop shut and paced the office. Monica watched him silently from the door. "You okay?" she asked carefully. "Why didn't anyone tell me Nathan was into this EV crap?" Monica raised an eyebrow. "You fired him. Did you expect a monthly update?" Kyle stared at her. "You think this is funny?" "No," she said, folding her arms. "But I do think you underestimated him." Kyle didn't answer, because she was right, and now the fallout was coming. 2 weeks after the summit, Nathan received a call. "Mr. McMillan?" came a clipped voice on the other end. "This is Thomas Leung, Vice President of Global Expansion at Jaguar Land Rover." Nathan stood slowly. "Yes? We saw your Detroit presentation. We'd like to talk about licensing the Voltage modular platform for our classic restoration program." Nathan blinked. This was big. He knew the deal could open global doors. He hung up and immediately called Dev. "We just got our first OEM call back." Dev whistled. "Hope Kyle's watching." Nathan laughed softly. "I hope he's sweating." Desperate, Kyle tried to pivot. He reached out to a local green tech consultant and hastily arranged a press conference. He announced a bold, electric, future strategy for Brookfield Motors, promising partnerships and upcoming electric inventory. But it backfired. One journalist asked bluntly, "Is this in response to Voltage's success? We heard your brother was behind that." Kyle's eyes flashed. No comment. But the damage was done. Investors began asking questions. 2 suppliers pulled out of deals. Rumors spread that Brookfield Motors was outdated and reactive, that Kyle was flailing. He was. And worst of all, he knew it. 6 weeks later, fate did what Nathan never planned. It brought the brothers face to face again. They crossed paths at an industry networking event in Chicago. Nathan, invited as a keynote speaker. Kyle trying to repair public image by clinging to whatever auto conferences he could get into. Kyle saw Nathan first, surrounded by executives, laughing, wearing a tailored black suit that screamed quiet, power. Nathan turned. Their eyes locked. For the first time in years, Kyle approached without a smirk. "You look busy," he said. "I am." Kyle hesitated. "I didn't expect you'd succeed," Nathan said flatly. Kyle winced. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," Nathan said calmly, "but that's okay, because you needed me out of the way to realize what you were standing on." Kyle stared at him. "You're not going to gloat?" "I already won," Nathan said. "I don't need to." He turned and walked away. Kyle stood there, small in a room that no longer recognized his name. Brookfield Motors had been around for 46 years. It had survived gas shortages, recessions, and the SUV boom. But under Kyle's leadership, it was stumbling toward irrelevance. The service bay sat mostly silent these days. The customer lounge was empty, except for a flickering TV playing daytime talk shows. Foot traffic had dropped by 35%. 3 long-time clients had switched to an EV-only dealership across town, and worst of all, the rumors were circling. Didn't his brother build that EV company? I heard the old man only left it to Kyle because Nathan refused. No. Kyle forced Nathan out. Big mistake. Kyle heard it all, in whispers, in awkward smiles, in the silence that followed him down the hall. Meanwhile, Nathan had become the symbol of new legacy. Not inherited, but earned. Voltage had just signed a $40 million licensing deal with Jaguar Land Rover. Dev called it a milestone. Nathan called it proof. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon when Nathan's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. "Hello?" A pause. Then, "It's Kyle." Nathan's stomach tightened, but his voice remained even. "Didn't think I'd hear from you." "I know. Look, can we talk?" Nathan's instincts flared. "Why?" "Because I think I'm in trouble. Real trouble." There it was. Desperation. The same tone Kyle used when he wrecked Dad's Benz, when he needed money in college, when he couldn't bluff his way out of a bad deal. Nathan almost hung up. But something in his chest, maybe not compassion, maybe just closure, made him say, "Meet me at Ray's, 20 minutes. Ray's was their dad's favorite diner, old. Ghosts made for honest conversations. Kyle looked older than Nathan remembered, not in years but in weight. Stress clung to his eyes, his posture, his voice. He stirred his coffee without drinking it. "The business is dying," he said finally. "The numbers are worse than they look." Nathan said nothing. "I tried to pivot," Kyle continued. "I brought in hybrids, partnered with a battery company. Nothing's sticking. Customers don't trust me." "They trusted Dad," Nathan said. "Then me. You inherited a relationship. You didn't earn it." Kyle looked up sharply. "I didn't come here to be insulted." "No," Nathan said. "You came to admit I was right." Silence. Then Kyle said, "I need help." Nathan leaned back and smiled. Nathan didn't agree right away. He didn't forgive. He didn't forget. But he saw something Kyle hadn't seen in time. The dealership didn't have to die. It just had to evolve. He proposed a radical idea. Voltage would acquire Brookfield. Motors and turn it into the company's first branded retrofit showroom and service center. Classic car lovers could bring in vintage models and leave with modern EV performance under the hood. Voltage certified, backed by Nathan's vision. And Kyle, he'd stay on, but not as CEO. He'd manage logistics, local partnerships, be the public face, but not the brain. Kyle swallowed his pride. He agreed, because failure had humbled him. And Nathan? He finally got to build something lasting, on his own terms. The sign came down on a foggy morning, Brookfield Motors, white. Letters with blue trim, was lowered from the front of the building by crane, the bolts groaning as if even the steel resisted change. In its place, a new black and silver sign rose, Voltage Heritage Center, Brookfield. The town buzzed with whispers. Some criticized the move as betrayal. Others called it the smartest pivot in years. Nathan didn't care either way. He stood on the roof, hands in pockets, watching it happen. Not smug, not bitter, just at peace. For the first time in his life, the building represented him, his ideas, his future, not his father's legacy, not Kyle's pride, his. When the Voltage Heritage Center opened its doors, it wasn't with a ribbon cutting. It was with a roar, albeit electric. The first customer was a local retiree named Martin, who brought in a cherry red 1968 Mustang GT. He wanted it to look the same, but drive like a Tesla. The result was breathtaking. Quiet, fast, reliable, clean. When Voltage posted a video of the conversion, it went viral in hours. Soon, reservations rolled in from across the state. Car enthusiasts, environmentalists, collectors, even celebrities. Nathan stood at the service bay, watching his team explain the process to a couple from LA. And behind them, Kyle was handing out iced coffee and brochures, smiling, not fake, just smaller now, humbled, and maybe healing. Weeks later, Nathan received a letter in the mail. Not an email, a letter. The handwriting was familiar, angular, sharp, his father's. Apparently, the letter had been sitting in a private drawer of the dealership's office, unopened, until Kyle discovered it while cleaning out old files. Nathan read it slowly, heart thudding. Son, if you're reading this, then maybe I'm gone, and you're finally free of my shadow. I know I was hard on you. I didn't understand your vision. I thought legacy meant keeping things the same, but maybe it means letting the right person shape it differently. If you ever do something with Brookfield, or even without it, do it your way. Make me proud. Nathan sat down, and for the first time in years he cried, not out of regret, but relief. 6 months later, Nathan stood backstage at the International Autotech Forum in Munich. He was the keynote speaker. Voltage was no longer just a startup, it was a movement. Restoration shops in 6 cities, a software partnership with BMW, a podcast series, a documentary deal, even whispers of an IPO. He looked into the mirror one last time before stepping into the spotlight. He didn't look like the man who once begged his brother for a chance to stay. He looked like the man who had built something bigger than revenge. When he walked on stage, the applause was thunderous, and somewhere back in Brookfield, Kyle watched the live stream from a corner office he no longer called his own, but he didn't resent it anymore, because even he could admit Nathan had become the man their father always hoped one of them would be. The sun was just beginning to set when Nathan left the office for the day. He didn't take his usual route home. Instead, he turned toward the countryside, driving one of the first full Voltage custom restorations, a 1970 Corvette Stingray, now fully electric. Silent, smooth, alive in a whole new way. He passed the old diner, the football field, the road, where he first taught Kyle to drive. The dealership was thriving. Kyle had found his place, not as a leader, but as a steady presence. Voltage had grown into something bigger than Nathan ever dreamed. Investors believed in it. Communities embraced it. Nathan smiled as the sky blushed orange and the electric motor purred beneath him. He had been fired by his own brother. He had been counted out by everyone. He had been told he didn't belong. And yet, he built something real. Not just a company, not just a brand. A legacy, reshaped with integrity, resilience, and vision. As the Corvette curved around the last bend and the hills stretched wide ahead of him, Nathan finally let the past go. Not with bitterness, but with peace. The end.